there, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Day to Day, the podcast where we explore the joys and challenges of everyday life. I'm Emma.
And I'm Alex. Whether it's personal growth, navigating relationships, or just tackling the chaos of the day, we're here to talk about it all and hopefully help you along the way.
So grab your coffee, tea, or whatever keeps you going.
And let's dive into today's episode.
Today, we're diving into a topic that's probably haunted all of us at some point or another: temptation and self-control. Have you ever wondered why it's so hard to stick to things like a sleep schedule or a diet?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, who hasn't promised themselves they'd go to bed early and then ended up doom scrolling until well past midnight? It's like there's this invisible force pulling us away from our goals.
Exactly, and that ties into something fascinating in psychology. It's about how this gap between wanting and liking something affects us. You might want to resist temptation, but it becomes a battle of willpower and biology.
Yeah, there's that famous Wild quote, right? I can resist anything except temptation. It's like even when we know better, our brains have this sneaky way of convincing us otherwise.
Totally. And it's not just about food or sleep, it's about any goal we set. Imagine trying to work with social media notifications popping up every other minute.
Don't even get me started. There's been studies showing how just seeing that little notification light can zap your focus and make a 5-minute task stretch into an hour-long ordeal.
Right, and those studies point out that when we want something more than we actually like it, we can develop a kind of addiction to it, whether it be our phones or snacks.
It sounds a bit like the myth of Odysseus. The guy literally had himself tied to the mast of his ship to avoid giving in to the siren's temptation.
That's spot on. It's like he circumvented temptation by altering his environment rather than relying solely on his willpower.
And in modern terms, it's about controlling your surroundings, whether that means leaving your phone in another room or setting up shop in a distraction-free space for work.
Exactly. Psychologists call this situation selection, where you deliberately put yourself in an environment that supports your goals rather than tests them.
Interesting. So it's less about gritting your teeth through temptation and more about smart planning.
Yep, just like that study where people who had better self-control were actually just better at avoiding temptation entirely. They didn't rely solely on sheer willpower.
Makes sense. And I think a lot of us underestimate the power of a little bit of planning. Like the difference between I'm going to avoid junk food and I'm going to avoid the aisle in the grocery store where junk food lives.
Right? And let's not forget the emotional drain that fighting temptation can have. Endlessly resisting can just leave you exhausted and more likely to give in.
There's this idea of ego depletion, where resisting temptation throughout the day weakens your self-control muscles, making you more susceptible by the end of the day.
Which is why maybe a little self-compassion could go a long way, recognizing that setbacks are part of the journey and adjusting our goals accordingly.
Yeah, turning the battle into more of a friendly negotiation with yourself, like saying today was tough, but tomorrow I'll avoid more triggers.
Exactly. And modifying the environment helps too. Think changing up your workspace or even setting up reminders for water breaks instead of snack breaks during work.
It's about making the healthy or productive choice the easy choice, creating friction against our weaker inclinations.
Absolutely. And for our listeners, maybe think about one environmental tweak you can make to help with your self-control.
Yeah, and share your thoughts with us. We'd love to hear about the creative strategies you've come up with to combat temptation.
Right? Because the journey to self-discipline doesn't have to be a lonely one. We're all in this together.
And with those strategies, maybe we can all get a little closer to becoming our own version of Odysseus, but with fewer ropes.
So until our next episode, try taking a simple step towards better self-control and maybe clear a little space around you to breathe without the extra temptations.